There we go. Okay, wonderful. I volunteered to go last, but while we sort this out. So yes, my name is Daniel Schuval. So I'm not coming from the academic side, but more the university management and administration side. I'm the senior advisor for internationalization. It's just a big fancy title, so they don't have to pay me more. But of course, in that role, and the reason why that role was created specifically at Bar Ilan, aside from the fact that I was already doing that type of work, was the idea to really not just allow internationalization to go on and support it in multiple ways, but to try to make it as strategic as possible throughout the entire university and in every potential discipline. But when it comes to practically realizing internationalization, of course, we have found at Bar Ilan University, and I think I could probably speak on behalf of most of my colleagues, certainly within the Israeli universities, that the Erasmus Plus framework is certainly the best resource to do that. You can tell by my accent that I'm not originally from Israel. I come from a small island about, I come from a small island about 3,000 miles from California. It's called Manhattan. But as an American, I can have to say, though, that the Erasmus Plus program, you won't find anything like this in the world, right? It is the most incredible resource for actually realizing all of our aspirations today. And certainly Alberto pointed out in his initial email about this forum that the idea is to really expand beyond the particular boundaries of Europe. And so what's interesting in Israel, that we really actually are sort of your first stop as you expand beyond the particular boundaries of Europe. Okay, maybe there'll be a couple other contenders, but we certainly in the field of religious studies, we very much regard ourselves in the European academic community, but on a very practical level, we are not. So so just a little bit about Bar Ilan. Actually, well, let me speak off slide for a moment. I do want to, of course, talk about Israel in general for a moment. I think that it's just valuable, and that to say that, again, I'm coming from a campus and a university that is fully vibrant, and the diversity of Israeli society is being realized every day. There are students outside enjoying beautiful weather, going to class, and I know that that's the case at every Israeli university. And we started the semester, of course, late due to the situation, but we have started to welcome international students again, and especially exchange students and full degree students from Europe as well. So I'll speak for a moment about Bar Ilan in particular, which is, some of you may know, Bar Ilan is actually the largest university of Jewish studies in the world, the largest sort of infrastructure. And that comes from our sort of historical identity as initially wanting to be an environment where students could pursue Jewish studies alongside other academic disciplines. And so every student at the university was essentially required to do Jewish studies. The university has changed very, very dramatically over the past 50 years especially, and even past 10 years in particular, where, and I've heard this throughout the entire morning, of course, the sciences, as they were, have continued to take a greater priority, but the sheer size of our Jewish studies faculty, I think, still keeps religious studies very, very strong at Bar Ilan. And as you can see here, and I won't go through every detail per se, but so then we have full departments focused on Bible studies, Hebrew and Semitic languages, Jewish history, Jewish art, Middle Eastern studies, Land of Israel studies and archaeology, Jewish philosophy, Jewish literature, and of course the Talmud and Jewish oral law department as well. And within all of those departments, we're obviously collaborating with the Faculty of Humanities, Faculty of Law, and now even to a greater extent, Faculty of Social Sciences, and even the hard sciences as well, in terms of doing actual hard analysis of texts. So it's really a very dynamic experience. Bar Ilan, most broadly, of course, it is a comprehensive and large university with over 20,000 students. But the reason why I put this slide up was really to talk about the breakdown. I thought it would be helpful, and I apologize, unfortunately, when I captured the graph, it didn't take the numbers, but it'll just give you a sense that, again, when it comes to international students, and we get about just over 1,000 international students a year, you can see that, fortunately, Jewish studies is doing fairly well, and the social sciences are doing stronger, but as we progress, our master's in Jewish studies is still our largest area of international students. And then ultimately, when it comes to the PhD level, here too, we're definitely giving the other faculties Now I'm talking as if I were personally representing the faculty, but from the university vantage point, we still do see that the faculty of Jewish Studies still really gives other departments a bit of a run for their money. And then this just gives you a sense again of how the breakdown is coming on an international level, and where we're culling substantial numbers of our international students from. Again, I think Israel in particular still manages to attract a lot of students from the US due to the obviously very strong Jewish population in the United States, and I think the events, of course, of the past several months, they've seen an even greater increase. But I can say, again, as an American, a lot of the U.S. students that come to us with a desperate need to spend more time in Europe, right? And that their understanding of the world and the future job markets and future careers in generally only exists between an understanding of the U.S. and what they might pursue in Israel. And we found more and more that they just lack so much personal experience in Europe. And so that's where my particular role comes in. So I'd like to talk just for a moment about, again, my side of activity, which is, keep me on, tap me on the shoulder if I go too long, okay? Which is actual intellectual collaboration. So again, just by show of hands, who here has very actively used the Erasmus mobility program at any point for the sake of their department? Well, okay, that's not as strong as I would have thought. Interesting. But of course, how many people are aware of the Erasmus exchange program? Okay, few more. Okay, so just to do a moment of background then, remember Erasmus is the program of the European Commission, which is essentially I like to call it the sister to Horizon in many ways, or maybe the younger brother, however you want to see it. But of course, Horizon's getting an annual 7-year budget of about 90 million euros, and Erasmus is getting an annual, a 7-year window budget of about 26 billion euros. But Erasmus is, of course, the European Commission's way of supporting all forms of educational collaboration. And the most well-known program within that is the Erasmus International Credit Mobility Program, right? Classic exchange of students and staff. And we have found this to be just the most invaluable tool in realizing actual joint PhD study, right? And that you can then, with those Erasmus bilateral exchange funds, you can start to send and receive both students and staff, and have staff coming to give lectures. And you can basically, without going through any formal university collaborations, start to realize these goals of joint PhD activity. We've also pivoted very recently into applying for and successfully establishing Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters programs. Are any of you involved in the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters? Okay, so Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters, for those that don't know, is again a very substantial grant from the Erasmus program to support master's programs where students visit at least 3 institutions over the course of a 2-year program. And I mentioned, so we've successfully won grants to have joint master's programs in brain and data science and now chem informatics. But I brought that up as a way to say that the resources are sitting there and they're waiting, and we're definitely looking to build that future joint master's degree, which we believe would be then an even more essential foundation for collaboration toward joint PhDs. We've also done a lot of Erasmus capacity building projects. And I think that when we consider different ways of reaching, again, outside of Europe, which now, again, does include Israel as a non-European, but we think about other developing regions in terms of religious studies in Africa and South America, Erasmus capacity building projects, again, are great consortium-based initiatives. Projects are usually up to 1 million euros to support generally curriculum development and or training on various levels, and they've been fantastic resources. So again, that's where I would say that from my particular vantage point, and especially listening to many of you this morning, is that I think some of the most profoundly impactful and successful resources that you should all be exploring, and again, we would be very happy to explore them with you, would be to the Erasmus exchange funds that are available, and to specifically under the framework of Erasmus KA2, which is the Key Action 2, The capacity building for vocational advancement, which is a new project that has just been put forth, which again can teach future PhD students actually how to make their relevance to the job market even stronger. There are a lot of grants for this type of activity. And additionally, there's Erasmus cooperation projects, which are actually meant to focus on European networks that want to strengthen their collaboration in a particular way. And then, if and when that could be relevant, they can bring in non-European institutions as expert parties. And so we've done a lot of that. I think that what's particularly valuable when we think about collaboration with Israel, and again, I say this on a countrywide level, is the Azrieli postdocs, the Azrieli Postdoc Fellowship. For all of you who don't know the Azrieli family, any of them that's ever been to Tel Aviv, so you see these three very impressive skyscraper buildings right in the city, those are the Azrieli Towers. And the Azrieli family sort of went about trying to create the Rhodes Scholarship of Israel. And so the Azrieli postdoc we work with all of the foundation works with all of the universities throughout Israel. So any of your students that would be looking to go on maybe to Tel Aviv or Hebrew U, there would be funding, of course, available for them. So I know the postdoc question came up a lot, so I encourage people to look into the Azrieli postdocs. And then on an institutional level from the Bar Ilan vantage point, so we have, in an effort to, again, try to make real headway in the area of joint PhDs, we've set up our own, I never really liked the name, but it does kind of work on a practical level, sandwich scholarship, which, wait for it, so the student in the middle of their PhD studies at a host institution spends a significant portion of time at Bar Ilan. So that's the inside of the sandwich, I guess. As the English speaker on the panel, I was like, guys, let's not have that name. But the committee loved it for some reason. My Israeli colleagues thought it was the best name ever. So on our level, we already are offering PhDs again funding to support this type of joint PhD activity. I was going to show something about Dominique Hernandez, but I'll just tell you the story briefly. Here was one of our perfect poster boys. He's actually, obviously, a very handsome guy as well. But Dominique is now at the university. Oh, now I can't remember. He's at a university in the South, in the Bible Belt, in South Carolina, and is a young faculty member there now. But I think again, when we think about reaching areas outside of Europe, I think that the U.S. global South, if you will, the Bible Belt of the United States, is really still a very, very substantial area where I think all of us, and especially together, could really be recruiting more successfully. And again, one of the reasons why we've been so eager to try to build more joint PhDs is because we see that, especially from the U.S. student market now, right? It takes a lot to get a U.S. student to cross the Atlantic for a PhD. It really takes a tremendous amount. But when there's this idea, oh wait, I could do something at Bar Ilan, and I could also spend a substantial amount of time at a European institution, then it really becomes something that would just never happen in America, right? Like someone won't do their PhD in New York and then also do a part of it in Kentucky, right? It just doesn't work that way. So it's really been a very attractive point. And he said that one of the things that he missed in his time as a PhD student at Bar Ilan was not having enough opportunity to really spend more time in Europe. So on that note, okay. Thank you.